What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today I'm going to share the deck that got me to infinite this season. I call it Tempo Thanos, and for the most part, I'm not redesigning the wheel here. Everyone is pretty familiar with just how good Mockingbird is with Thanos. However, one card that you might not see a lot of is Crossbones, and I think that really speaks to how I think Thanos can be or should be played right now. The stones allow you to put out a lot of really great early pressure, and then with those alongside Mockingbird and Cull Obsidian, you often find yourself with priority and with leads in locations, which makes Crossbone a really good fit. If you just have a stone at a location and your opponent has nothing, that means you can play Crossbones. And Crossbones is basically like a second Cull Obsidian that doesn't die to Shang-Chi, but can be played a little bit more flexibly. Speaking of Shang-Chi, you'll also notice that that card is absent from this deck because we will often have priority, so we want to be Aliothing people. Professor X is also really good when we can use it to follow up a Cull Obsidian and protect it from Shang-Chi, or just one of the deck's other big cards, or even just a pile of stones, or even just nothing, if you don't think your opponent is going to play to a given location on turn 5. Professor X can win the location, and that makes it easier for your Alioth to hit, and most of that stuff is pretty straightforward at this point. On the final turn, you've got a number of options: Blob, Alioth, Blue Marvel, or Jeff to flip Professor X's location are also possible, and Blue Marvel can get played alongside one of the stones. Jeff can get played alongside either of these two 4-cost cards. One other thing that I should mention is I started playing this deck when Krakoa came back as the featured location. I was pretty close to infinite already by playing a bunch of Pixie Loki this season. You can see my previous video and check out that deck, but I did think that Gladiator in particular would be really good with Krakoa, and getting your Krakoa trigger to land on one of your stones just gives a lot of flexibility in terms of how you're going to play the stone, because it only costs 1 energy for like a 1/9 or a 1/11 in the case of Power Stone. So that was basically how I arrived on this deck. The last cards to talk about here would be Mobius, which is mainly just because everybody should be playing Mockingbird Thanos right now, so Mobius is here to make my opponent's Mockingbirds a little bit more expensive. And then Psylocke is another way to curve out into Crossbones or bigger cards like Blue Marvel and Professor X. I don't really have too much more to say about the deck other than that. It basically does the same thing every game, and I honestly don't really even have that great of highlight clips to showcase because most of the games just play out the same. You start off with some stones, you play some power in the mid game, and then you try to close out with Professor X and Alioth. And this game is a textbook example of that, and it's the game that got me to infinite. So I thought it would be a cool one to look at here. On turn 3, I'm gonna snap because I can play Jeff into White Hot Room next turn, fill the location, get the extra energy, and then move Jeff out of there. So this seems like a great initial setup. However, my opponent is going to snap back here. This play definitely caught me off guard a little bit. Gladiator is going to take out their Cosmo, and then I'm going to draw some cards with my Mind Stone, which is also definitely a strong thing. That'll give me Space Stone so that I can move over into Kunlun, but they have Brood plus Wasp to fill up White Hot Room for themselves. Was not expecting that one, but we can still do a lot this turn. We can play Jeff plus a pair of stones. That's going to give me a free Mockingbird. I'll also be able to use Reality Stone here to change over one of these locations, and like I said, Space Stone can allow me to move into Kunlun. Maybe get out of White Hot Room as well, where my opponent is actually going to be able to add a lot of power still with Patriot and potentially even Silver Surfer down the line. So I'm going to Reality Stone the White Hot Room. That turns it into the Vault, which is not a great location for me considering my opponent already cannot play cards to that location. So if I want to play something to the vault, I gotta do it this turn. And there's a few different options that I'm between here, but with the onslaught in that center location, I do think I want to drop Professor X there. And then as long as I play Mockingbird to replace the power that I just lost in the vault, I think I'm going to be winning both Atlantis and the vault. I might actually be losing Kunlun here if my opponent plays like a Iron Man or something like that center. So there's definitely some risks going on here, but they are going to full commit to that center location, which, like I said, I think means I'm winning both of these side locations. Turns out they are going to Mystique their onslaught before dropping a Patriot, so they're actually winning in the vault, but I do have the win currently in Kunlun and in Atlantis. And then from here, I just get to drop Alioth. And my opponent is not going to retreat here. This is kind of an interesting scenario because I've lost the vault by so much. And if my opponent plays like Mr. Sinister or something, they will have a ton of power. That'll be like 16 power, which would have been really tough to beat, but I have priority, which means I get to beat them with Alioth. So that is what got me to Infinite for the season, and we'll take a look at one more game as well. So there's some cool stuff going on in this game from a gold conquest that I played where I'm currently losing in Sakaar. Sakaar pulled my Professor X and my opponent's Iron Lad, so I'm unfortunately losing in that location. But I do still have some outs. I don't think my opponent is going to be able to take me in the sewer system, especially with Iron Man as the play. So I play both of my stones, which locks me out of the sewer system for the final turn of the game. But the idea here was this gives me a better chance to potentially draw Blue Marvel or Alioth. And with this Alioth, now obviously with just priority on the final turn of the game, I just have to bank on my opponent not playing for sewer system, and then I will win in Ant Maze and in the sewer system, losing in Sakaar, of course. But that is an 8-cuber. I actually wanted to take a look at the next game as well. I get an early Professor X out because of Time Stone, so Time Stone's still doing some great work post-nerf. And this is also potentially like a better Time Stone deck because of the different varieties of costs of the different cards that we're playing. It makes it more likely that we're able to use that Time Stone deduction while also weaving in some other plays. Like you can play a 3 energy Crossbones alongside a 3 energy Gladiator or Mobius. So that just gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you are concocting your curves here. And what is really cool this game, I actually can't beat my opponent in Hellfire Club here. Unfortunately, I'm losing in Hellfire Club, and I can't play 1-cost cards there, so I can't play Crossbones, nor can I play Cull Obsidian, but I can play Cull and Mockingbird both to Ant Maze on this final turn, and I can move over the Gladiator to just add an absurd amount of power to that location on the final turn. Could also play Crossbones instead of the Cull Obsidian to potentially play around Shang-Chi, but if my opponent's playing Shang-Chi, then they're not playing anything else. I did also want to consider the fact that my opponent might be a Living Tribunal deck. So I was doing the math to see if there's any way to beat Living Tribunal. It would be 11 power in all 3 locations. Answer's no. It might even be 12 power in all 3 locations, but I can't beat it, so I'm not going to play around it. A lot of people aren't even playing it anyways, but figured with the Iron Man, maybe there is a chance, but I'm not going to worry about it. I think my opponent is just trying to drop a bunch of power on this final turn, and that is indeed what they are trying to do, but we drop way more power, 28 over into Ant Maze, and they have got Brood plus Dazzler. Yeah, not gonna do it, unfortunately, but that is gonna do it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.